Good evening. Welcome to our fire information meeting. Tonight, due to fire activity, we are going to go straight to the East Troublesome Fire. Again, we have Grand County Sheriff Brett Sheraton, and we have Incident Commander of the Northern Rockies Incident Management Team 6, Jay Winfield. No further ado, Jay.
Good evening. Thanks for the introduction, Penny. We've had a lot of activity today, but before we get to discuss the fire, I would like to welcome and introduce the incoming IC, as I will be the outgoing IC. Tonight is our last night. So with that, Noel Livingston, welcome. He's from the Pacific Northwest, Team 3. And he will take the fire over officially as of 0600 tomorrow morning. So with that being said, we'll jump right into the East Troublesome Fire. It's been very active today. This current map up here indicates 24,700 acres. A most recent MMA flight, which is a similar projection as this, and it's about roughly an hour after this one, indicates it's around 30,000 acres. So I want to give a live update so folks are aware of what's going on. So significant activity in the north flank. This is really producing most of the activity and smoke right now. As you can see from previous nights' maps, we've got growth up here also on the north flank, and this right now is engulfed in flames as well. You'll also notice a significant spread to the east, and yes, that is across Highway 125. I'll talk about those details in a little bit. And we also have significant growth here in the southeast corner around McCurry Creek and Kinney Creek. So with that being said, we typically talk about the heel of the fire and use that as a reference point and walk around. But I can tell you most of the concern is in the southeast corner and the northeast corner of the fire. So I will address those right away. So this morning we've been actively working on this southeast flank. Right now the fire is outflanking the dozer work that's going along, trying to pick that up. But what we have noticed recently is most of the fire spread has turned and more northeasterly. So that actually is some pretty good news short term, and I'll talk with that short term what that means for us. Up here on the northeast, several hours ago we had a spot over 125. That spot was immediately active. We could not engage that fire due to smoke and wind, so no aviation resources on it. There's no access up in there. And right now, based on folks from the field, we've heard that it's just south of Little Gravel Mountain in Section 3. So from this map to the MMA map, that's a substantial part of growth there. So as we began today, we were hovering right around that 19,000 acreage mark. So significant growth today. We have structure protection folks up here. We've also been working with the sheriff and the fire chiefs. We've got mutual aid working up here, and right now they're engaged in pretty serious structure protection work, but it is going well. This fire is mostly moving to the northeast, but it is beginning to come more towards the south. So we envision continued structure protection work in this area through the night. The southeast, folks have been putting in line here, down here in the BLM, trying to contour across, and there's a big flat ridge here, and we're trying to get to that ridge. Unfortunately, the wind and the fire behavior is not allowing us to do that. We were running heavy helicopters and large air tankers in the morning, but due to the wind and the smoke, they were told to shut down. So we're out there with just boots on the ground right now. The fire is growing faster than we can catch it right now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Brett Schropp.
Good evening, everyone. Brett Schropp, Grand County Sheriff. Get back into the screen here. There we go. All right. So once again, high activity day. Jay just talked about that. County resources, local resources have been engaged with that all day. Been in communication with the team. Been in communication with the county. Our local fire districts are actively involved, and so everybody actually is out into the field. You'll see these people all over the place. Obviously, as we had a busy day. Just a quick reminder. Pre-evacuation status remains in effect for the Bighorn Park subdivision on that far west side. They were evacuated day 1 of this fire. We haven't forgot about you over there on that side, and we continue to monitor them as well. Drowsy Water, Kinney Creek, Corral Creek areas down here on the southern part of the fire. This part's obviously been active as well. We're continuing to leave evacuation orders in place for those areas north of the Highway 40 corridor there. So all of those, basically hot sulfur to Granby, are in effect for right now. A little bit of reference, Highway 125, north to south right here on the east side of the map. That does remain as a full highway closure with hard closures on both the north and south ends of that fire. As for the safety, we want to really try to minimize the amount of traffic that goes through there with the smoke, with the amount of fire personnel that are actively working on the roads right there. That's been closed for a few days, and I anticipate that it'll be closed for a few other days as well. Both the east and the west side of Highway 125 remain in evacuation status. Before today, that was from mile marker 5 to mile marker 22, which is basically our county line. In addition, this afternoon, we did actually do an evacuation status on the southeast corner of Highway 40 and 125 up to mile marker 5, which includes the Sea Lazy U area and that section right in there. Additionally, this afternoon, up here in the upper right on section I of your evacuation maps, we did issue another pre-evacuation alert for section I. We issued that about a week ago. Just want to remind you folks that once again, you are in an evacuation area, and if you need extra time, now would be the time to do that, just to make sure that give yourself a little bit of time to get ahead of an evacuation order if that does come. At this point, there has been no evacuation orders issued for that upper northwest section in sections I and sections J and sections L. We just did in section I that one additional pre-evacuation alert. So a lot of things happening. Crews remain in the field, and your law enforcement partners will be out there throughout the night monitoring things as well. So I think that's all I have. Thank you.
So Sheriff, we'll start with you with some questions. Is Granby being evacuated?
So a little bit of reference here on the map. So in the far right-hand corner is the town of Granby right here. So how Granby basically is at this point there is no pre-evacuation or evacuation sections within Granby. We're monitoring that. However, this is very, very far out here in comparison to the terrain and the conditions that we're seeing. And Granby's kind of unique because there's a lot of things around it that actually prevent the fire from moving rapidly through there. So we are watching that area, but at this point it's not.
What does structured protection entail, and what does it look like?
So I'll pass that off to Jay when he comes back up.
Very good. I'm due east of the fire off 34. What can that area, when can they expect that area to be evacuated?
One more time on that question, I'm sorry.
Due east of the fire just off 34, is that area expected to be evacuated?
So that is our sections J and L on your evacuation maps. So take a look at those. What we've basically done is we divided up residences that have that 125 corridor as their primary egress and ingress, and then the addresses on the additional evacuation areas on the other side that have Highway 34 as an egress ingress. And so at this point, we're just focused on that 125 corridor, and we're not actually focused on that Highway 34 corridor. I should rephrase it. We're focused on it, but there's not a need at this point.
Is there a way to find out about the status of homes just south of Cabin Creek on 125?
So at this point, as Jay mentioned, fire crews are in there actively working on structure protection. It's too early to tell exactly what's happening in there. When crews come out of the field, maybe we'll be able to assess it. It could be a couple days before we actually have good answers on that.
The next set of questions are for the incident commander.
To the east, so I'll address the upper portion first. Right now, as I said earlier, the fire is moving rapidly to the top of this ridge. And as it well, a couple things. As it continues to top out here and begins to back down that different aspect, we're hoping to pick it up in areas, but at that same point, we would be looking at evacuations. There are management action points in place for aviation resources or aircraft have not been unable to fly there due to the smoke and wind. On this southeast portion, our plan here is to bring dozer line along here and hook into this big flat open, semi-open ridge. A lot of that's based on timing and fuel loading. Where we have heavy fuel, we are virtually unsuccessful due to the dry conditions. But where we have fine flashy fuels, we can potentially use that to our advantage and hopefully hook this southeast section.
Are you going to get any more manpower to fight the fire?
Absolutely. Noel and I and several others have been on the phone most of the day requesting, recruiting folks. A lot of that's coming from our state and local partners. We talked about mutual aid. Those folks will be out here. And at that time, in combination with the wildland firefighter folks that are out there, I think we're going to be able to make a pretty good stand on many of those residents. With that being said, addressing what structure protection looks like, addressing two things. We could have structure engines out there, many of those coming from our state and local partners. Those can be type 1 engines, type 3 engines, things like that, or resources like that. And as they set up typically closer to the residents, but before all that happens, we have folks out there, previous days, assessing the defensibility of those structures, and much of that work has been going on. So all of that is relative to how defensible the private land and structures are.
Let's see here. At what point do you look at closing Highway 34? Oh, that's for the sheriff. Excuse me. One more for the IC. What is being done to the northeast side of the fire to prevent it from spreading east?
I've already addressed.
I think we're ready for the sheriff now and his questions.
Do you have anything to say, Noel?
I could just maybe add to the question on strategy. Certainly, two big challenges in front of us, as there have been for the last number of days, and that is all of the activity in Colorado currently, this vying for resources to address these fires, and then certainly the weather and fuels conditions that we're facing. So put that together, and we're seeing these significant runs, particularly in the heavy fuels, that are extremely difficult to get stopped until the wind quits blowing, to be frank. So our focus, as Jay has really talked to, and that we're working closely with the sheriff on, is going to be on the higher values at risk, the structures, the improvements, the residents that really are in an arc around this south and east side of the fire. So that's been the priority. That will continue to be our priority going forward as we transition with Team 6. So I'll leave it at that.
Sounds like the next one's for me.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you please comment on ranches up on 125, for instance, C Lazy U?
Sure. So I've been in contact with the manager at Sea Lazy U over the past several days. They started kind of working on a evacuation ahead of their evacuation order, just like I recommend that everybody does. And they moved some horses out a few days ago. They really minimized their operations. And then when we actually talked to them this afternoon and changed it from pre-evacuation to evacuation order, they were able to quickly make that happen. And so I think they're almost out of there if they're not out of there already. But that kind of applies for all of those ranches right along that corridor.
Good. Is County Road 64 under pre-evacuation or evacuation?
So County Road 64 is actually on the east side of Highway 34. So it's even farther away from the fire than some of these areas that are closer. So that's one of those areas, just like Granby, that we're continuing to monitor, but it's not a pre-evacuation or evacuation area.
Another question concerning Sulphur Springs. When are they going to have to evacuate?
So as the last few days, Hot Sulphur Springs on this map right here is right here in the middle. We've been getting a lot of questions about Hot Sulphur, And I think it's very comfortable to say that this fire continues to kind of move this direction towards the east, and it actually isn't moving into the town of Hot Sulphur. Hot Sulphur, very defensible. You got the river right there. You got a lot of different options. The town itself, we're watching just like we do everything else, but the direction of the winds and the terrain is actually pushing it away from town there.
Is the electricity turned off on Highway 125?
I believe that it is. Yes, it is.
Questions are coming in.
Can I add one other thing while the questions are coming in?
Absolutely.
So I just got a message from the National Park Service, and they just asked me to relay that up in Rocky Mountain National Park, all trails on the west side of the park system are actually closed. So I'm sure they'll put that information out internally through them, but they asked me to pass it on to you as a community. That's not a scare tactic, anything like that. It's just part of our ongoing.
Due east of the fire, just off 34, is that area expected to be evacuated?
So that is our sections J and L on your evacuation maps. So take a
Where we have heavy, that's a great question. And really, this requires a lot of discussion and planning and dialogue, but I'll give you a brief answer. Really, you strive for not having conifers. Conifers are lodgepole pine, the pine species, spruce species. Having limbs and overhanging flammable fuel on your roof. Defensible space also talks about the types of materials you've used to build your house, specifically tin roof versus asphalt shingles, things like that, as well as having firewood stacked up near your house or around your house, and then also keeping just tight, clean, trimmed lawn and brush species away from your house, and that's really about it, what we look for. Obviously, egress and ingress is a huge thing when we talk about defensible space, because if there's only one way in and one way out, we're less likely to have folks in there because it's pretty simple for them to get trapped in there, and we do not want to do that.
How is the weather this weekend going to impact the fire?
Our fingers are crossed. Noel and I walked around with crossed fingers all day once we heard the weather. If we do get that frontal system come through after the winds that usually come or precede the weather, we're hoping for significant snow. We've heard everything from a few inches to maybe close to a foot. So what they're talking about there in terms of precip is roughly maybe up to a half an inch, which equates to roughly 6-7 inches of snow.
Can we provide firefighters with food or other things?
Well, those are some of the activities that go on behind the scenes. Logistics and the rest of team members really support those firefighters out on the ground. Appreciate the offering. That's very willing of you and appreciative. But those folks are being taken care of. 3 good solid meals a day. We've got good areas for them to bed down if they don't have to work through the night. So they are well taken care of. They're well fed. So we're doing fine there. Appreciate the offer. As I said previously in an earlier evening meeting, please support your local folks. They're in need. You know, with Sheriff has talked a lot about people being evacuated and moving animals around, and those of you that are not evacuated, you can imagine the stress, and those folks really need that support. The firefighters, they do this for a living. They're well equipped, conditioned to do that both mentally and physically, and they're doing well out there.
I got one more comment real quick. All right, can I actually get Jay to join me up here for a second, please? See if we can both get on the screen somehow, however we gotta do that. All right, so on behalf of Grand County, my sincere thanks to you. You are an incredible leader, have led us through the last 21 days or so. So my thanks from Grand County to you. And on behalf of that, here's a coin of excellence from the Sheriff's Office for your incredible leadership.
Thanks.
So the community and I have loved to work with you the last few weeks, and truly a leader at heart. So thank you.
You are as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the meeting for tonight. We're going to do another one again tomorrow night. It will be with the brand new team from the Pacific Northwest, Team 6, and, excuse me, Pacific Northwest Team 3. And continue to ask your questions. Public information officers will get back to those questions and answer them on Facebook.